Hello, I'm Casey Aiken. Welcome to a special edition of 21 This Week, where we will focus our attention on Thrive Montgomery 2050, the reimagining of Montgomery County's land use policies. With us today in our opening segment is the Planning Director for the Montgomery County Planning Board, Gwen Wright. Later in the program, we will be joined by former County Council member Nancy Floreen. Stay tuned for this special edition of 21 This Week, coming up next. We are pleased to be joined today by Gwen Wright, who for the past 13 years has been the director of the Montgomery County Planning Department of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. Welcome, Ms. Wright. Appreciate your coming on the program to discuss this important proposal now being taken up by the County Council, that being Thrive Montgomery 2050, a new look at land use issues in our county.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, this is an important issue. I'm glad you're able to come on and discuss it. You know, for those who, aren't quite as old as I am and don't know the history of Montgomery County has been the beneficiary of growth in the federal government over the past 7 decades. And I personally have often admired those planners in the 1960s who worked and implemented the Montgomery County Master Plan. These are individuals who were prescient in their predicting of how our county would grow. I was particularly amazed when we had the 2000 millennium and they almost had the exact population to the projections, to the number. But this is a new era. We've got to move forward. And last November, the Montgomery County Sierra Club came out in support of Thrive Montgomery 2050 in an editorial published in Maryland Matters. And in summary, they said, it's time to support a new approach to land use development and urge that Thrive 2050 be adopted. So Gwen, the question to you is, what is Thrive 2050 and how is it going to improve our lives?
Well, thank you for that question. Montgomery County does have a very, very rich history in terms of its approach to planning and land use. The 1964 plan on wedges and corridors actually has won a National American Planning Association award as a landmark in planning history in terms of how it really addressed issues that we now call smart growth and transit-oriented development early in the 1960s. So we're very lucky to have had it. Thrive Montgomery is an effort, again, not to reinvent Montgomery County, but to rather build on the great planning legacy that we have, but to have it respond to the changes that have occurred. The first thing we did, and it came out actually in January of 2019, was a trends report, where we looked at how Montgomery County has changed in a whole series of demographic measures in the last 25 years. And we've changed a lot. The county is significantly older, more diverse, and frankly, economically stagnant. I hate to be blunt, but that is our reality. And so we felt it was appropriate to take this time not to create change by doing a new update to our general plan, but to respond to the change that has happened and that is happening even as we speak. So Thrive Montgomery is an effort to take a look at these issues of demographic change, economic change, climate change, which we all know is a huge issue, technological change, represented by us all being on the Zoom meeting together, and think about how in the next 30 to 40 years, we should be growing as a county. So that's the simple answer. Basically, it's about how should we be growing given all the change that has occurred.
Well, that's a lot to unpack. And so just a very basic question is, we were introduced to the concept of smart growth, which you mentioned just in your opening statement, by Paris Glendenning in I guess it was the 90s, may have been early 2000s. And so what's the difference between what you're proposing and smart growth, which really focused on increased density along major traffic corridors?
Well, I think that this is actually a refinement of a lot of those smart growth ideas. I have a lot of respect for former Governor Glendenning. I think he did a lot of great work in the planning arena, but he could not presuppose or predict the fact that we were going to have a major BRT plan for BRT corridors throughout the county. He could not predict some of the technological and demographic changes that we are experiencing. So in its essence, Thrive Montgomery is essentially saying what former Governor Glendenning said, which is that growth should occur in a compact form along transportation corridors, but we just have more transportation corridors now. When the original Wedges and Corridors plan happened, we had I-270, and that was it. And there were corridor cities like Gaithersburg, Germantown, Clarksburg along I-270. Now we have changed and we've become a web of transportation corridors that not only go north-south, they also go east-west. Quite a few of our BRT lines go east-west. And we have to think about how that web is going to build out.
Well, so let's try to break down the different segments of the Thrive 2050 plan. And a great deal of attention has been focused on the impact that it has on traditional single-family zoning that exists in a large part of our county. And one of the expressed fears is that it would allow too much density in what is single-family residential neighborhoods.
Well, it's unfortunate that a different project called the Attainable Housing Strategies has gotten conflated with Thrive. But let me just tell you, and Councilmember Hans Remer stated this very clearly at the last council work session, Thrive is not about development in single-family neighborhoods. Thrive is about development along corridors. And that has been the emphasis from day one of Thrive. We did have a council member, Will Jawando, who introduced some legislation about duplexes and triplexes in single-family neighborhoods, but he did not do that on the basis of Thrive. He did that because he thought it was good, in his mind, a good idea and would address some of his equity issues and concerns. We asked the council to actually hold off on taking action on that zoning text amendment. I personally asked the president and Fed committee chair at the time to hold off so that we could study the issue. And we have been studying it in the planning department since March of last year, when the council asked us to do that. And we continue to study it. In fact, we have a really interesting panel discussion coming up on February 24th with people who have worked on creating more diverse housing types and housing choice throughout the United States, from Oregon to Minneapolis, Minnesota, to actually a representative from HUD, because this is being looked at on a national level as well. And we invite everyone to watch that item, which will be on the planning board agenda on February 24th at 6 p.m. We also are very, very interested in continuing to emphasize, again, housing and housing affordability in Thrive. Thrive has a whole series of recommendations about housing affordability, which is separate from the issues about duplexes and triplexes in single-family neighborhoods. Thrive talks a great deal about how we can address housing affordability and lists a whole variety of tools. We have a housing crisis in the county, and I'm really sad to report that in the last 3 years, unfortunately under this executive, the production of moderately priced dwelling units has dropped by 25%. We have, in fact, traditionally produced about 360 moderately priced dwelling units a year in this county. We're down to 266 per year. We have had no new legislation from this administration about creating new housing tools to improve housing affordability. And Thrive is trying to get us out of the sort of, stalled and actually decreasing situation that we have on affordable housing, and trying to recommend a whole series of new ideas that can come forward with affordable housing, and hopefully ones that will also minimize gentrification and displacement while getting affordable housing on the ground.
Well, that's a real conundrum, because I know from personal experience, my daughter and her husband were all set to buy a home in Montgomery County late last spring, when the housing prices just seemed to go up by a third overnight. And so housing affordability is an issue, I think, for everyone in the county, not just at the MPDU unit, but for middle-class families as well.
We agree. That's absolutely true.
So you mentioned in your opening statement about the county being economically stagnant. And the economic development and the business development has always been an issue that I've been very keen on. How are you going to address economic stagnancy and in a county that has a reputation for being unfriendly to business?
Well, I've been really, really pleased that the major economic development groups in the county have all come out in favor of Thrive. We've had letters from the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, from the Gaithersburg-Germantown Chamber of Commerce, the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, all supporting Thrive and the ideas in Thrive. And I want to just quote from the letter from the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. Thrive recognizes, this is a quote, Thrive recognizes the role of redevelopment in achieving our environmental and equity goals, in addition to improving our economic competitiveness. The plan also acknowledges our members' most pressing issue, which is the attraction and retention of a talented workforce. Thrive does this by outlining a vision of how Montgomery County will create and connect communities where talent wants to live and work. And I really couldn't say it any better than the Chamber of Commerce. We have to have a county where businesses and workers want to live, want to grow. And we believe strongly that the ideas in Thrive are the ideas that will promote that. We haven't been moving forward on many of those ideas. And I think that, again, we have, as always in this county, a bit of paralysis by analysis. And we have a lot of conversation, maybe not quite enough action. That's why we're hoping to get action on Thrive as soon as possible, so we can start implementing it and getting changes on the ground.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I just got a sign from our producer that we only have a little over 2 minutes left in our segment. And I just I've got kind of a two-part question for you, which is one, I'd like you to talk about how we move forward. I know in just in a process statement, but also address the transportation issues, because there are those who feel that Thrive is, well, to be frank, called anti-car, and that it relies on transportation models that were popular in the 1970s, but are really no longer applicable.
Well, thanks for those questions, because it's a little discussed part of Thrive. We did, for the transportation segment of Thrive, we did detailed scenario modeling with one of the top transportation consulting groups in the United States. And we looked at a variety of transportation scenarios that could play out. And our recommendations in Thrive are based upon this information. And I want to say Thrive is not anti-car by any means. We know people are going to still be using their cars. But what Thrive is trying to say is, let's create some balance. Let's say that cars and moving people as fast as possible down a road isn't the top priority. The top priority is actually getting people to have choices of other modes of transportation, and to make sure pedestrians and others are safe and not in danger when they walk on our roads. That's the whole Vision Zero idea.
Well, what are the next steps? Since we have about 30 seconds left in this segment, if you could elaborate on that, please.
Sure. We're certainly very happy to continue to work with the County Council on any additional outreach that they may have. They've had 2 public hearings, a town hall, 2 listening sessions, meetings with every one of the neighborhood advisory groups in the county. And but they have, I think, a desire to do a little more outreach, and we're glad to work with them on that. We hope that they will take action as soon as possible, because again, we don't need any more paralysis by analysis. We need action to move Montgomery County forward. And that is something that we're very much in support of.
Well, paralysis by analysis, I think, was invented here in Montgomery County.
I think you're right.
And I think we've all had to suffer through that over the years. I want to thank our special guest, Wynn Wright, the Director of Planning, for being here today to give us that comprehensive view of what Thrive 2050 is. And we look forward to seeing what steps the County Council takes and whether it's going to be approved this session or not. I want to thank you for being here today, Ms. Wright. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
When we come back from this short break, we'll be joined by former County Council member Nancy Floreen to talk about what we just heard and some other interesting subjects. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now we're joined by former County Council member Nancy Floreen. And Nancy, with your long experience on the County Council, what's your view of the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan?
Well, give me credit. I also was an 8-year member of the County Planning Commission as well. So I've been in the trenches for many, many years. You know, look, this plan hits all the right political notes. And what people have to understand, it's just a plan. It's just words. We already have a bunch of sector plans which actually address local issues discreetly and clearly. This is a broad statement of policy and objectives. So people need to realize this doesn't change a thing. It's really just words. I'll say, in regard to your concluding conversation, Montgomery County dug its own grave years ago with respect to economic development. We've not supported it, and this plan says nothing about it, which I think is a shame, except that we're going to create nicer places for people and that will somehow encourage employers to locate here. But there's no word of support, no word of advancement. I was kind of surprised by what the chamber wrote in. You know, it's better than being negative about it. There's no leadership on economic development here, and there hasn't been for many years, and that's why we are the way we are. Transportation, it's the same old thing. Take the bus. Fact of the matter is, people of color, people of poverty, they need their cars to get to random places where jobs are. And I think the emphasis on car-only situations is not a positive one for the long term, but this confirms what the council and the planning board has been doing for a long time. So, it's just words.
Well,
And they worked hard, and I will guarantee you that the council will not approve this before the primary. So look for any action in the summer and the fall, probably the summer.
well, I want to thank you for your observation. It's, obviously that's an important topic that recognizes the fact that we do have to every once in a while move into a new direction and a new rethinking of how we do our business. As Ms. Wright said in her opening statement, we're meeting on Zoom now and not in a studio. And so the technological advances really have to be taken into account as we look at how the economy is going to continue to grow in Montgomery County. But I want to shift gears just for the last few minutes we have in this segment and talk about the forecasting for the governor's race and what you think about who the front runners are in the Democratic primary, since there really isn't much of a Republican primary going on.
Well, my pick is Tom Perez. I worked with him as a council member way back when. He takes a lot of credit for that these days, for being on the Montgomery County Council. One of the smartest men I've ever worked with or known, and I think he'd be a great leader. Of course, Montgomery County is well represented in this race. We've got a lot of candidates, and I sure hope one of them from Montgomery County wins the governorship.
Well,
it's time for us to have someone in that spot.
Well, it would be nice, since we're the economic engine that drives the state and the most populous jurisdiction. It would be nice, but
about time, yeah.
But we all know how Baltimore centric the state is, so you never know. We got 2 minutes left, and one of the interesting things that the General Assembly ideas that are being put forth was a bill that would expand the amount of history being taught in schools, as well as the type of history being taught. And I think it's appropriate that it was being introduced this month because of Black History Month. There's a feeling that there's a dearth of history being taught about the African-American experience here in Maryland. And your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great idea. I am a little concerned, though, about the idea of legislators telling people what to teach, because it can go both ways in terms of restricting activity as opposed to encouraging it. But certainly, kids need to know everything that we can tell them about our nation's history, about our community's history, from every possible vantage point.
Well, the reason I picked up on it was, even though I wasn't a history major in college, it was always a passion of mine to learn about our nation and our especially our locality. My family was originally from Kansas, so I grew up thinking I was from Kansas, not from Maryland, for until I turned 18, and then I realized, oh, I live here. So I think it's great that we expand our knowledge of our historical underpinnings. So that's pretty neat. We're gonna take a short break now for parting shots, and when we come back, we'll have a parting shot or two. Stay tuned. And now with parting shots, Nancy Floreen.
Sure. Well, I certainly would encourage people to do their best to stay informed. Of course, watch this show, but also read everything you can online. Bethesda Beat is a great resource for what's happening in the community. They're covering the candidates running for office, particularly local office that no one knows anything about, including the school board, and also what's going on down at the planning board. These are important issues and stuff that people need to follow.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Now, my parting shot is all about saving some money. And, the unfortunate thing is we're not aired until Sunday morning, but this weekend is tax holiday weekend for appliances. If you want to buy a new air conditioner, a refrigerator, replace the lousy washer. You know, ever since they came out with that high energy efficient washer, they stink. So if you want to replace it, this is the weekend, because the 6% Maryland sales tax, it doesn't is not charged from Saturday through Monday, till midnight Monday. So come down to Casey's Emporium. Well, if I had one, you could come there and save 6%. I want to thank our special guest today, Gwen Wright from the Planning Board. There's a lot of information about Thrive Montgomery 2050 that gets bandied about, and her explanation was very welcomed by our viewers, I'm sure. I want to thank Nancy Floreen for her perspective on things. It's great to have someone with your experience and background. And of course, I want to thank the viewers of 21 This Week for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 This Week, I'm Casey Aiken.